Guru Kripa Kevalam. Namaste and welcome everyone to Satsang today. Sadguru Sri Muji Baba ki Jai. So, what are we doing here? That might not be a bad question actually. Why are you here? Is it? And whatever you can define will get in your way. If you have a why for why you are here, then when I point you to the timeless and the spaceless and the qualityless, the attributeless, you will compare your idea about what brought you here with this reality, which is beyond all phenomena, and that will get in your way. But I came for this. You see? So, so are we going to be sticky about that? Because that will get in your way. You may have an idea that you came for ice cream, Baskin Robbins, or something, but you're getting into a spaceship which is beyond time and space. So, how will you compare that against your ice cream expectation? Maybe we can clarify right off the bat. You say, show me the truth. Suppose I show you. How will you know that you saw it? What evidence will prove to you that you saw this unseeable reality? Now, you heard me often enough by now to know that it is not something, the self is not something perceivable, and everything perceivable in a way is the self, but you have a sense of what I mean. When I say that from which all of this manifest comes from, in itself is not even perceivable, and yet it is always apparent. This much you heard. But what happens now is that you'll say, how will I know if I found it? There should be peace, there should be bliss. And you don't give it a minute. You see, even for ice cream line, you're willing to wait longer. Then, for the byproducts of the recognition of the self, must happen. You see, and that's how you trouble yourself then. You see? Because when I click, it is done. It is not a special click. It is done. You are free. You see, but you don't leave yourself alone for even a moment to assimilate it. You start checking, saying, did it actually, what's happening? Is he really messing with us, or is he? So, it's important when you come to satsang to leave yourself to the master. If you leave yourself alone, that much is enough. You don't even have to leave yourself to the master. Just stop troubling yourself. That should be more than enough. How do you trouble yourself? If you have a reason for coming, if you have an idea about what should happen, if you have some notions of reality, they will only get in your way, as that which is so simple is being pointed to, so apparent is being pointed to. Now, why are you here? I'm very happy you're here, but the but I see this often, isn't it? We have these things that ideas about the self that we try to come to or arrive at either an experience or an understanding. Which notion, which idea do you feel unsafe without? What is the idea if you had to leave it? You feel like you would be lost or you wouldn't know how to exist. You see? Because behind that notion of safety or security, you've created a false meaning, false knowledge for yourself. One says the notion that I find difficult to let go of is this: I need to keep doing something to earn my bread, to do khana, pina, sona. So that means to run the basic existence of life. You see? So actually, we are talking about two different things. You see? In the realm of appearance, everything appears. You see? Everything appears and everything disappears. In everything that appears and disappears, this entire realm of activity, doing, not doing. You see? What we do, we hear about this world waking state coming, and we think it is coming for this body. So we've already separated the body from the waking state. You see? And then we feel like we have some agency or volition about this particular aspect of what is appearing, and we don't have any other volition about anything else. You see? So if you have volition or you have agency, then it is about the entirety of all of this. Is it? Or you don't have any agency at all. So either you're the one agent who is responsible for all of this, and then we can say everything happens in the light of consciousness, or all is the will of the Almighty. Is it? Or there is no such thing as agency. But to have this idea of individualized doership, you see, is fraudulent. So you may say, oh, I see, this whole world is coming and going, and now I have determined reality to be that which does not come and go. Therefore, I can use a word like Maya for this world because it comes and goes. You see? So this thing is Maya. Now what am I supposed to do? You see? Isn't it a very strange question? Because the organs of doing are also included in that Maya, no? And therefore unreal. You see? So we already identify with this body conditioning and say, I discovered as this flesh bucket that this around me is Maya. And we forget to include this dream character, and we start still trying to figure out, okay, now that I'm within this Maya, what am I supposed to do? You see? But you are not within this Maya. Maya is within you. You see? And that which gives birth to it, your being itself, consciousness itself, your I amness, you see, which is the projective light and the screen of this play, knows very well how to take care of it. So the fictional character who doesn't know how to move a finger, you see, must not waste their time asking this kind of thing. Because if I say, uh, what you have to do is you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to stop doing this, you see, in the realm of activity, then do you know how to do any of that? Don't know. You may have some strange theories about it saying, oh, I decide, and then based on that decision, and decision being a thought belief process, you see, and based on that decision, I I move my hand, you see. But what happened between decision and moving hand? You say, my brain does it. The neurons get fired and things. You know how to move your brain? You know how to fire the neuron? You see? Do you decide to fire them? Nobody knows. You see? So, just like the sharing of this satsang is happening, I can promise you that there is no Ananta sitting here speaking these words or deciding to say or not to say. You see, it is just a flow along with the rest of this flow. Just like that fan is moving, these words are rising. Just like your hearing is happening most organically. So don't judge yourself based on the movements of this aspect of your experience just because it pretends or seems to be so intimate. There is no reason, no good reason, is it, to separate yourself as a set of perceptions from this multitude of perceptions that you are perceiving now, and then look at only a bunch of them and say, this is me, but that is not me. What makes it so? What makes it so? You see? You could even be looking at the hands and saying, my hand, my hand. You see, but why not the space in the middle? Why is that not my or me? Aren't both just perceptions appearing to you? You see? And this was not natural to us. This was not there in our natural innocence. We were taught this by one aspect of the mind or the other, whether you call it society or parents or karmic tendencies, whatever you may call it. So that which has given this light to this appearance of the body, let that take care of all the movement of this body, what happens to this body. So let me revisit the question. He asked, I need to keep doing something to earn my bread. So that's just a level confusion that we have. I'm not talking about you at this level at all. When I say become open and empty, I'm not talking about you becoming Shah Rukh Khan or something. I'm not talking about this kind of open and empty. If that naturally appears, that's okay. But what I'm saying is that inwardly, and inwardly is also a provisional term that we use. Inwardly, you remain open. In your mental space, remain open. Let all these thoughts, let all these ideas of duality, doership, and desire, let them come and go. And this is very, very important because many are listening to satsang and trying to implement the pointings of satsang as if you are the body. But satsang is just consciousness speaking with consciousness. And that is any satsang. True satsang is just consciousness speaking with consciousness. So all these ideas of who's my master, who's my disciple, Who am I listening to? Who am I not listening to? Is not satsang. You see? Anytime when there is no separation, when you are being pointed to that which is not limited, you see, that is satsang. Okay, so I hope that clarified. Next one says, I need clarity. There are a few intense emotions. It burns. My immediate reaction is to judge and analyze it. I feel if I'm going to let it go, I need to understand where it came from and the root cause of it. Okay, we pause here. We do not understand the root cause of anything that we claim to understand. You see? Any of this cause and effect nonsense, we can safely throw away. We don't even know if time is real. You see, cause and effect needs to be in time. You see, time itself is notional. So if you keep chasing reasons, that's why I started satsang in this way, to ask you what is the reason. If you keep chasing this reason, cause and effect, you see, we will just be stuck in this compartment of our existence, which is very, very tiny, smallest part of the train. You see? So leave this compartment of the train and come to your heart, come to your intuitive insight. That is when you board the Guru train. You see? When you're just trying to figure. What have you figured so far? You see? I promise you can throw it away. If God or self or reality, your existence, even your worldly existence, which is this manifest state, was so tiny that you could make it a formula in your head, you could figure out the equation for it in your head, then it would not be God's creation or God itself. This is not so small that you can figure it out. So, provisionally, at some level, this is all right. I found that I have this childhood conditioning because my parents used to tell me this and this bothers me. So we can play with some of that provisionally. You see. But when we are sharing satsang, we are already in the mode where I'm presuming that you have made the request, point me to that ultimate reality. You see? So the answers are already coming in that pretext. We have another format now, which I call the just listening sessions, where you can come and you can share and we can talk about how things seem to be and I can listen as a friend. But the difference between the just listening session and satsang is that in satsang, I'm already operating under this contract that you made the request, don't beat around the bush, take me to that which is the ultimate reality. You see, satsang, the company of the truth or the presence of the truth. The truth that we are speaking of is the capital T, which is beyond all comings and goings. You see? Don't, if you feel like you cannot do without determining the cause of everything, we become addicted to it. I understand that. You see, we cannot do without determining this causes this is why this is why this. You see, then say that God is the cause, or self is the cause. You see, the causeless is the cause. No? Otherwise, you go back in this chain of time. You see? Then what is the causeless? So that causeless, that immaculate, that timeless one, that is the one cause of all of this. So what is the root cause of everything? It is consciousness. And once you meet it from that perspective, which is still provisional and yet but still useful provisionally, is that you let go of these individualized causes. oh, this one did this to me, that one did that to me, this is what I have to work on. All these false narratives about non existent ones, you see, we get trapped in those. Don't assign any other cause to anything except consciousness. We say Guru Kripa Kevalam. Means all is the Master's grace. All is the Master's grace. Then what is the one cause of everything? Master's grace. The word Kevalam means only, alone. It is the Master's grace alone. So, if we feel like we cannot leave ourselves alone and we have to put a cause, then let's say it's Master's grace. And that itself, Master's grace, will wipe out your need to make causes of things. And what will happen is that as you accept everything in that way, in your openness to accept all emotions, everything can come and go, you see, without intervention of your belief systems, without interpretation from your intellect, you see, then you will find that you're not so concerned about what is showing up and what is not showing up, you see, because you will meet it as your spacious being, which is unperturbed, unhurt by anything that may appear. I need clarity. There are a few intense emotions. It burns. My immediate reaction is to judge it and analyze it. You see, it's good, you spotted it well. No? So, something, you see, and then it comes, frustration. You see, this is because this happened. You see, we start getting into the, and what causes more suffering? Your perception of anything that may appear in itself does not contain suffering. You see, you have to experiment with this. You see, the pure perception of whatever it may be, because without a label, without a notion, without an idea, you have not yet constructed a limiting boundary for your being. You see, even if you say, I am experiencing this, you see, and if you have a notion about what that I is, then this seems too big for this I. You see? But if you leave it alone, you see, not to mean any sort of avoidance of it, you see, but you leave it without interpretation, then you truly meet it, and you realize that for your being, that which we may be calling the strongest emotion, you see, the strongest appearance, whatever may come, you see, you will realize that it is nothing but a little tiny mosquito. You see, not even mosquito. As long as this, as big as this earth is compared to this universe. You see, so if you're focused, if you're walking outside, you see, in the night, and you're just looking at things on the earth, it can seem huge. It can seem like this is the biggest thing. You see, there's no way this is so big. You see, once you look at the night sky, you see millions. You may be not able to perceive millions, but you recognize the possibility that this, which will seem like it's such a huge thing, is actually nothing. In the same way, you see, when something arises for us, because we forget the context of the substratum on which it is arising, you see, it can seem like it's such a huge thing. But the moment you allow yourself the space to look beyond that which is just grabbing our attention, you will recognize that it's just a tiny blip on the infinite spaciousness which is your being. You see? So when we say that something comes very strongly, intense emotion, for example, you see, We've already defined ourselves unknowingly. You see, for something to be intense, you have to have a shape. You see, what can be intense for the space in this room? What has to appear here which can be so intense for the space in this room? So whether it's water or fire, you see, any elements can come, but the space remains unaffected by it. Nothing is intense for it. In the same way, it's just a metaphor, but your being is more spacious than this space because this space arises in that. You see? And these are not intellectual words that I'm sharing. I'm just sharing with you what has been directly intuited here. You see? So that being in which this space arises, which itself cannot be touched by no matter what comes, what can be intense for that? You see, so already in that there is a condition of me being something. So then you may say, so what is then the solution? What is the answer that I'm giving you? I would say that as much as possible, and in the play of this universe, I've seen that there is nothing as curative, nothing as healing, as just pure perception. You see? So whatever may be arising, as much as possible, remain without interpretation or judgment of it. You see? Because that is the true openness. That is the true openness. So when you say my immediate reaction is to judge, you see, it's actually not immediate. Because the judgment will come as a notion, attention goes on that notion. You see, something takes it to be truth value true. Yes, that is called belief. You see, so consciousness plays in the realm of time with all of these things. So it is not immediate. You see, immediate is freedom. Everything else takes time. You see, immediate is truth. Everything else takes time. So your judgment is not immediate. It takes time. You see? So, and anything that is in time, you can let go of. You as consciousness. You see, you are the originator of all of this. All of this appears actually in your play. You are not actually bound by them. But if you take yourself to be a limited object, you see, then all of this can seem very strong. But I would say that even before you judge what is appearing, you have made a judgment about yourself. You see. And once you make that judgment, then all the other is easy stuff now. we've sowed all the seeds. Once we've defined ourselves, you see, then to judge everything, interpret everything from that perspective is very easy. So if it seems difficult, no, what I'm saying, to remain open to all these judgments, let them come and go, then just as much as you can, with no forcing, just effortlessly, you see, meet everything as space. Because space, at least somewhere your mind has some sense of it. You know? That which is the space in which space comes, the mind is completely lost. So in the interim, and this is for all of you, if you find things come which are very strong and they're difficult and you find yourself so confused, just be like space. Allow everything to come and go. And this will point you to your reality, which is more spacious than this space itself. So pure perception, meet everything as empty space, as open space. Okay, let me continue with what you said. Sometimes I feel this perpetuates the intense emotions. We talked about that. Can you please help me? Is it better to let the reaction and trigger be the witness? Is it better to let the reaction and trigger be and witness it? Yes. Yes. You see? All that appears, you are the witness of it. You see? So, when I say remain empty, don't try to take the observer position, because many are struggling to do that. You see? Many are just trying to, okay, when things are coming, I've been given the job by my master, I have to witness it. You see, but that itself doesn't remain the witnessing. Then witnessing is happening already. All you have to do is not define yourself. You see, but because if you define yourself as the witnessing, then you are no longer just witnessing. It's already burdened by that definition. This is a very subtle thing. You see, because in all satsangs, here also very often, in a pointing you may hear, you just remain like the witness. You see, so I want to clarify that a bit. So I want to tell you that witnessing is just naturally there. You can't turn it off. You see? Can one of you stop witnessing for a second? You can't do it. It is just naturally here. It is naturally what you are. You see? But the minute you decide to be a witness, you've made a shape for yourself. You see? The minute you say, I'm going to remain as the witness, you see? Taken shape. You see? Then you will say what? Soon the mind will come with a report saying, I tried to remain as the witness, but I got shaken out of it. Already you gave yourself a shape. No? Only that which has a shape can be shaken. So, so if your mind is getting confused with what I'm saying, good. Don't worry. You see, it's good. So let the mind remain confused. You remain as the space without the intention to even remain as the space or the witnessing. You see? Let that which is naturally playing out play out, whatever it may be. Don't give yourself any dimension, any boundary, any label. Okay, then you say, or is there value in understanding where and when the emotion began? Thank you very much, you say. Thank you, my dear. So, yes, there are stages in our life, you see, where those kind of studies may be helpful. You see? If something's been bothering you, sometimes you meet a therapist and you look at things together and they say, see, this is how you have this condition, and this is when you started defending things like this, you see. So that could be helpful at certain stages. If you are in satsang and you feel like you've transcended some of that and you're willing to meet truth in a very naked, very open, empty way, then just remain empty. You have to go with your heart, what it's saying, you see. You have to go with that. If you feel like you feel like it is too much when I say remain a space, remain open and empty, you see, you feel like it's too much, you cannot really relate to it, it doesn't resonate in your heart, then some of the other things could also be helpful to you. So you have to take this to your heart and ask yourself, you see, what is the sense you have? From here, it always feels like I have the one medicine for all ailments. Like I'm the vendor of these medicines in India. No? They have these little red bottles. What does it do? Everything. 10 rupees, you buy this bottle, whatever your ailment is, will be. So, and satsang can be like that, depending on how much openness is there, how much surrender is there, how much we've learned to drop our expectations, drop our definitions, drop our interpretations. So in that way, it can work like the pill that cures everything. But if you feel like you need some help in trying to deal with things at a different layer of your existence, I don't even want to call it a level, because it's not a thing about levels higher or lower. But if you want to meet things in a different layer, then that's fine too. You just have to check in with yourself and see. One says, my master told me just sleep and eat. Very good, very good. It's very, very helpful. No? Sometimes a simple thing like this can just take out all the other stuff that we are getting troubled by. So my master told me just sleep and eat, and in that my question appeared saying, what about these normal things that I have to do on a daily basis? You see, this is the thing. The master told you just sleep and eat, but you say, hey, what about that other stuff? You see? And if you're going to take word that the master is telling you, because you said it's your master, no? So he must have or she must have a resonance, must have a sense of what is the best way to point you to the reality. But if you take everything that the master is saying and you say, hey, why, what, will this really work? Then you're the master still. Then better not call anyone else the master. You see? The master is who you will follow. The master means I am going to follow this one. You see? Now, if so, as opposed to a friend or a teacher or a guide, a master is different. No? You went to, presumably you must have gone to the master and said, what should I do, master? And master said, just sleep and eat. You see? But you say, what about the other stuff? You see? And if it has to fit into your construct of what the instruction should be like, then the instruction is already lost. You see? So when I hear, for example, just sleep and eat, it reminds me of just remain open and empty. Because these are very natural things which will unfold anyway, so don't trouble yourself. So don't do your master the disservice of letting the mind overrule the master's instruction. You see? Because then your mind is still the master. The one that has the veto power, that is the master. Then you say, next one says, are any worldly goals worth pursuing? Everything that appears in the world, you see, is worth it for consciousness, as whether you call it love or joy or peace or any word you want to put to it, it is fine. You see? But when we start to distinguish and say, spirituality is worth pursuing, work is not worth pursuing, I only want to do this or I don't want to do that, then you fall into traps like, how do I balance? How do I balance my work, my family, my satsang, all of these things you don't have to balance at all. You see? Consciousness is balancing everything for itself. When consciousness plays this game of individuality, then it tries to play this game by trying to figure everything out. So when you say, how do I balance, we are trying to figure out, oh, how much time should I give to my work, how much time should I give to my family, how much time should I give to satsang. Don't need to do any of that. The world is just the world, just an appearance within your being, and everything that appears within that is, you can say, worth it. If you like to say it that way, you see, or you can say it's for the joy of it, it's a leela, it's a play. So, but don't second guess yourself. Don't have too many ideas about this is what I should be doing, why am I doing this. You see, don't meet life in this resistive sort of way, and you will see that life unfolds like a beautiful river. It is flowing. You see, imagine one drop in the river saying, hey, should I go left or should I, what is the balance between right and left? I like the left, I like the right. You see, how do I balance this thing? The river is flowing. You see, this is the drop sitting there saying, how should I do this? You see? And then like that story that, who was it? Francis, exactly, good one. So Francis Lucille once shared this story. No? He said, I don't remember whether he said he went to the amusement park or anyway. So someone went to this amusement park and they got on this ride. Okay, now this ride was this like a roller coaster, and you drive the thing, and there are multiple options, right? So what will happen is that the ride starts, and then you will see this sign. It will say left or it will say right. Then if you see left, then with all your might you're supposed to turn left. You see, and if you've done well, then you'll go left, and you'll reach a good destination that way. So what happens? The ride starts, started. The signal comes left, and he goes fully left, and it works, and he's feeling good. I did a good job. That's all I have to keep doing. Then it comes right, but it goes left. You see, he tried full might, but it went left. Then what happened? He said, "No, see, I knew it. My effort was not full in that one. You see, I should have done better." So like this, left, right, left, right. The whole thing is went through this entire ride, and at the end, what he realizes? At the end, he realizes that the whole thing was pre-programmed. All the lefts, all the rights were exactly like they were meant to be. But throughout the journey, the pride came, the guilt came, the feeling of being very good came, the feeling of being useless came. You see, all of this. Of course, I'm paraphrasing the story now, but that is the feeling. So, so from a provisional perspective, many have used this metaphor of watching a movie. You see? Then when the scene appears, and we feel like we are one of the characters in the movie, then we may say, oh, does this coming to this room, interacting with these people, you see, or doing all of this, is this worth it, or should I be somewhere else? But if you were to if you were to take the perspective of the real perspective, you will see that this entire movie is playing out. You see, so is every scene worth it or not worth it? That's up to you to decide. But to distinguish and say, hey, this is my doing and this is God's doing, or these kind of things, and how can I, which goals should I pursue, and what should I really do or not do? Who is the protagonist of that? That's a killer question, actually. This one, who's the protagonist? Even of our spiritual story. We come into spirituality, we say, I want God, or I want the truth. You see? Suppose it happened that you came into spirituality, you see, and God found God, and God had nothing to do with you. Would you be okay with that? You see? So the you that started this journey is going to get left behind. Is going to get left behind. And as long as we try to keep taking this me along for the ride, sometimes I say I'm taking you beyond this universe, but you, in your backpack, you want to carry the me. So you just feel like, oh, but why can't I come? Oh, you can come, but you can't come. You can come, but what's in your backpack can't come. You see? You burden yourself too much, you will not lift off with that backpack with the me inside. So trust everything that is unfolding here. That one that has all the power to unfold is unfolding it with great beauty, not messing up your recipe at all. You see? And the one that thinks it has some power to decide doesn't exist in the first place. Next one says, I have realized one thing: suffering is in the mind only. Yes. Mental stories. There is no suffering outside mind. Yes. Without the mind, I become like a kid. Yes. The innocence of a child. Now I have given a challenge to myself to find some suffering except in the mind. It's okay as an experiment. But don't make it into a thing, because that if you make it into a thing, it will become another thing. You see, another source of suffering. Whenever suffering comes, you say, whenever suffering comes, I ask just this question: is it in the mind only or outside the mind? Very good, actually. That's sounding very good. I have not found one suffering outside the mind till now. Beautiful. Very good. Very good. One thing also happening is slowly I am realizing that this suffering person was also in the mind. The suffering mind, the mind's representative, or let me see if I can put it more clearly. You see? The narrative is determining that there is an existent entity there. You see? But there never was. It's just like you read a story. You see? Like I used to read the Chronicles of Narnia. So after reading the Chronicles of Narnia, then you feel like you conjure up all the imagery based on all the concepts that you received of all the characters in the book. So I had a notion of Aslan, you see, and even so that it felt like I had a relationship with that Aslan. No? So, so in the same way, we conjured up a non-existent entity, you see, based on just the narrative that we have received through this voice. And because the voice claims to represent somebody, doesn't mean that it actually exists. So when we say that the person is just in the mind, we are saying that the mind itself, you see, is only claiming to represent something personal or a reality which is limited, but actually there is no such thing. There nobody like that actually comes into existence. If there was an existent entity, we could reach that somewhere in time and space and say, okay, let's do an operation, plug that out and throw it away. Hey, gone, done with this person. You see, but it's not that. You see, it's just like if you were to start imagining yourself to be on the Narnia theme. So if you were to start imagining yourself to be a prince or princess, then you start thinking, oh, my palace would be like this, and this is what I would really want, and these are things which are good, these are things which are not good. In a very little time, it can seem like there's a real entity like the prince or princess. You see. Yeah. So, because in the appearance we seem to have some circumstantial evidence, because the mind will come and say, but I'm not like that, I have this to show you, but that's all fraud, because this does not want anything that you want. This does not know want. It is very, very innocent. This body instrument, you see, has no desire, has no concept of past or future. You see, it's just so naturally present. You see? So, so we cannot make this appearance of the body the culprit. It is the fictional one that desires, that wants, that has ideas. You see, that that causes all the suffering. So there is no such person also in the mind, although it the voice seems to represent someone. Then you say a thought also comes that without mind I will be nowhere, very vulnerable. But then how good am I with mind? Very good. Very good. Very good. Just to see that. Many tell me like this. I just feel so scared. I feel like I'll be lost. I'll be so lost without the mind. And sometimes it comes up here jokingly. How well are you doing so far? Is it? Where has the mind got you so far? If you were not lost, then why would you be here? This is very good contemplation. Very good. Is it? And this kind of trump card that the mind will play and say, hey, you will be lost, you will be in limbo, You won't know what's going on. You need to get a balance between spirituality and the world, and be a little practical. You see, all of these things are very, very primitive to the mind. You read talks with Ramana, same questions people used to ask. If I let go of my mind, how will I take care of my family responsibilities? I have a business. You see, these kind of things. If you go back to the Upanishads, people come and say, oh, oh, great sage, if I let go, only the language changed. Huh? If I let go of this mind, then who will take care of my kingdom? You see, I have all this. So for thousands and thousands of years, in one way or the other, we've been asking the same question, and the primitive mind has got the same trump cards actually. It doesn't have anything else. So, as an antidote to this, you see, I'll be so lost without the mind. You see, the great Master Bankai said, all things are perfectly resolved in the unborn. You see? All things are perfectly resolved in the unborn. That doesn't sound like lost. So I'm very happy with the contemplations you're doing, with the checking that you're doing. Very good, very good. Next one says, Dear Father, before a few days, I felt I was getting closer to understand what you were saying and also experiencing it. After a couple of days, it seems everything is gone. Then I'm back to square one. It's okay. It's very normal reaction. It's very normal reaction to the mind for these things to come. It can, this so-called oscillation. Guruji one time used this very beautiful metaphor, which I will not be able to repeat as well as he does, but the metaphor of this drop falling into the water. So many years ago, they did this very slow photography, and they found that the drop doesn't just go plong. So what happens is the drop goes, you see, some of it gets assimilated in the water, a small part of it comes back. Then it goes back again, comes back. You see? So it can feel like that I'm returning to square one. It's never like that. Some part of it always gets wiped away. Every true meeting with the Master, every true meeting with your divine presence, you see, is going to empty you in some way or the other. Now don't expect your mind to certify that. You see, just trust. Just trust. So don't expect the drop to know how much of the drop is gone. You stop judging yourself in this way, it will make it much easier. The good thing is that you're in satsang still. Then you'll be just fine. Next one says, Father, since I came to know about these teachings, life happens spontaneously, or what is destined to happen will happen. You started noticing that. It's not that after you came to the teaching, life happened spontaneously. You just noticed more and more that we felt like we are controlling life, but actually it was just the river flowing, and the drop has never controlled anything. Then you say, I feel like I became very lazy and I don't have any control over the actions of this body. Is this also part of the play? You see, all your positions, let them go. All your positions. Lazy is an idea, let it go. Control over the body, actions, all of these are positions, let them go. Even the notion that you are somewhere contained in the body is just an idea. You see? Like, what is the body's relationship with you? This body. You see? The body that you take to be yourself. What is that one's relationship with you? Just another appearance. See? Just another appearance. So you are as much that body, this space, this carpet, this couch. But these you cannot force yourself to think and believe. These will just be insights that unfold organically for you. You see? But sometimes I want to share them because it takes us away from this limited construct we have, which is so untenable anyway. Many of us have this idea that I am somewhere inside the body. An object can only contain other objects. No? So if you were just objective, then no point talking about truth and eternity and that which never comes and goes and the timeless one. Then along with this body, you're on this ride to the graveyard or to the cremation ground. Just accept that, relax about it, it'll be fine. You see? But I'm saying it like half jokingly because I know that something already in your heart is aware that you are not just that. That's why even in the West, where you could, maybe you're not conditioned into these kind of teachings early on, but even in the West, when a body passes away, we wish the one saying, rest in peace. You see? Rest in peace. Whose rest are we talking about? When you're presumably dead, no? If you were just part of the body or just sitting somewhere in the body. You see? So the idea can be that sometimes what happens is, fun metaphors come. So one time I said, can this glass contain anything except other objects? This is a glass, so it can contain other objects. Then one said to me, very good answer actually, yes, Ananta, it can contain space. You see? But it's not true. It is the space which is containing the glass. It is the space which is containing the glass. The glass does not contain anything, you see. It is just appearing in that same space and claiming containership of something. You see? So it is the space in which the glass is arising. It is not the glass which contains the space. In the same way.
Unless we separate the space in the glass and the space outside the glass. Unless we assume there is a separation in the space in the glass and the space outside
but
the
even
glass.
then, you see, it would, if what you're saying is true, so suppose you were to say, okay, this part is the space in the glass, right? So now I contained it, or find some physical way to contain that space, then the same space should carry through, right? I know it's a childish sounding example, but there's something there, you see. But it's actually then you realize, because if it was objectively contained like something, then you could hold it back in its place and say you remain contained in this. It doesn't happen that way. The space remains. It is the space which contains the appearance of the glass. You see? In the same way, this idea of you being contained in the body is also the other way around. It is this body, in fact, it is this universe which is contained in you. You see? You are the space in which this space shows up. You see? And I don't want you to trust what I'm saying. You see? I don't want you to trust what I'm saying where you take it to be another truth and say, I am the space in which this space appears. We don't want that. I just want to be able to shake you up enough so that you can lose your limited notion or become a little doubtful about it at least. And say, I don't really know. You see? So the point is not to give you new constructs, so it will become a new prison. The point is to bring you to the I don't know so that you can have true and honest insights for yourself. You see? And may those words, if they appear one day from your mouth, be fresh from your own inner seeing, not from some words that you heard somebody say. Having said that, so I was just reminding the other day. So does the glass contain the space, or does the space contain the glass? And if the relationship was that way, then it would be able to carry it with it, where it went. Okay, I don't know how we got here, but it is not a bad place to get to. Is years of sadhana in forests and mountains a mind game? In the activity itself, you see, we cannot say. One could say, I retire to the caves, of the Himalayas. I'm leaving this worldly stuff, renouncing the world, and I'm going there. And they could sit there and become open and empty. You see? Another could become full of pride. See, I renounced my world. I was a banker. I had millions of dollars. Look at this. You could spend 50 years just thinking about how great you are, and then that could actually be worse. You see? So it could be a mind game, or it could be open. You see? So we can't really say. Same for the world. You see, the householder life. In this case, it seems to function fine. Where from this emptiness, all these activities seem to play out without much trouble. But in another case, it may not be that, maybe so. So you just have to go with your intuitive insight about this, you see. Because if there was a template, if there was a generalization possible, then humanity would have figured it out by now and said, this is it, that is the cave, this is the book, this is the practice, do it, finish. You see? But there is no such standard operating procedure. You see? Our conditioning is very unique. We're all like unique snowflakes. No? So the melting will happen in its own unique way. Next one says, Father, what is selfishness? What is selfishness? So, to expect is selfishness. What are you without that? My master sometimes says, live as if you have no rights. And it can sound very strong to those, especially if you are new to satsang. You see? Empty of expectation, empty of resistance, empty of this should be like this, it would be better, empty of better actually. You see? This better is the problem. It would be better if you didn't have better. You cannot even escape better in the pointing in satsang. So, this idea of resisting what is because we have a concept of what could be different or better, you see, is selfishness. So it plays out in many ways, no? And the spiritual selfishness is one of the worst varieties of special selfishness in terms of how much it can trouble you. You see? So when I point you to that which is not perceivable, which is not conceivable, and it is just so simply apparent, most of you don't leave yourself alone because you start expecting, you start becoming selfish. You don't realize you do this, of course, and I'm speaking from direct experience here for many years. So we just immediately burden it with, oh, where is my firework? Where is my bliss? Can I just keep this forever? You see, and in that we take on the image of the limited one again. So this wanting, this grasping, this neediness, what's in it for me, which is the Maha Mantra of the ego, what's in it for me, you see. So it is selfishness. You see. In fact, the ego cannot survive without what's in it for me. You see? So what happens for many of us in spirituality is that we met the world in a materialistic way first and tried to make it give us love, peace, joy, all the good things that we thought we are entitled to. And then we failed at that. And then many, not everybody, but many come to spirituality because they feel like from this I can get those things. You see? So we wanted materialistic advantages so that we could have some individual benefit. Now we want spiritual advantages so that we can get individual benefit. You see? That's why I say satsang has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with me for that matter. You see? So let go of the one who is seeking, who wants. You see, because that one will just keep you trapped in this selfishness. Nitin will be happy to know, and Jyotima, that we have 101. It's a very auspicious number. 101. Why I'm joking about that is because last few satsangs, I got some report that one or two were not able to join because the Zoom had this limitation. So then we upgraded the account. And now how many can come? Nitin can tell us.
500.
Oh, 5. That'll be many years. We are set for many. We are set for a long time. But I was just feeling that anyone who comes to satsang, they must not feel like it's full or something. Okay, next one says, Father, nothing can really be done wrongly. This is so clear. Whether a choice seems to be made, no matter what it is, to see a therapist for emotions or a medical doctor for a broken bone, to remain open and empty, to breathe even, all is as it is. No mine, no me to decide. Very good. If the body is following a curative path for any and all disease, even while in satsang, then this is how it is. Yes. It changes nothing and harm nothing. Yes. However, it may seem very difficult to live this way if one is not so fortunate to have a guru. Love you so much and so grateful for your guidance. Yes. The presence of a master, presence of Guruji has been the greatest gift that appeared in this life. So definitely everything is a lot more difficult. Everything without a master. This is true. Next one says, Namaste, dear Ananta. Thank you so much for sharing satsang with all of us. They are so valuable. It is burning so much since I know you. Thank you for your presence in my life. Thank you too. God bless you. God bless you too. Thank you so much. Thank you. Next one says, thank you very much, Father. Your satsangs are very helpful. Thank you. One says, can you explain Guru Kripa Kevalam in your words? I'm sure over the years I've explained it in various ways. Let's see what comes up today. Let's see if we can meet it here. What I'm really pointing to is a conceptual emptiness, an intellectual openness. You see, when we're not relying on any words or any sort of phenomenal expression to describe what is, isn't it? To remain open and empty is to be without the constructs of mental understanding, you see, and meet what is in its utmost openness. You see? So what I'm really pointing to is an utter end to belief in these conceptual notions about yourself, in these conceptual limitations. Now, many can find that very difficult, confusing. The mind throws everything it has at you. So sometimes what I do is I say, okay, now if leaving everything seems like too much, you have license for one notion. And I also sometimes make a menu for you guys and say, you see, these are the good ones that you can hold on to. So I would say Guru Kripa Kevalam, for example, is a very good one, because anything else which is coming, but what about this? This should be like this. This should not be. Or my life should be this way. I should be free by now. Whatever the notion is, you can say the Master's grace is all there is, and it is taking care of everything. You see. So that is one final notion. Then if you have this, then you don't need anything else. You can say, you can have, it doesn't have to be in Sanskrit or Hindi. You can say Guruji takes care of everything. No, I have no trouble because my master is taking care of everything. It can be something very innocent and simple like that. You see, some will say, "But this is all airy fairy rubbish, and we don't believe in this kind of devotional tropes. So what else? So we are not attracted to this kind of stuff. Give us something else." So Bhagavan has given us. He said, "Ask yourself, who am I?" You see? And who am I is super powerful, because not only can it do the cleanup job of the nonsense representations of what is from the mind, you see, because I should be like this, I should be more like that. You see, it says, who am I? All get cleaned up. Not only can it do a cleanup job, but also it is very helpful because it takes you beyond that which you usually expect in the world. When it says, if you follow Bhagavan's pointing, it will say, when something appears, whether it is a thought or something else, you can say, who witnesses that thought? You see? So it takes you beyond these phenomenal concerns into that pure witnessing. So that's why this is another beautiful concept, you see, that we can hold on to. Then there are many, like make no distinctions, for example. It sounds like, it doesn't sound super great, but it's actually fantastic. You see? Make no distinction. If you make no distinction and you just, you see, you could say, forget about better or worse. Forget about better or worse. So all of these are helpful sticks, you see? Helpful final sticks that you can use. So in our scriptures, you could say that I am Brahman. You see? That could be another one. I am Brahman. So whatever resonates with you the most, you can pick that. You have license for that one, and that one will be like that thorn that Bhagavan talks about, the thorn that removes the other thorns, and in the end it is thrown away too. For some, it doesn't have to be a conceptual thing, it could be a mantra. You see, you could take a mantra and just, whatever is happening in life, you stick with that. Or with Maharaj's example, his master told him, just stay with the sense I am. And that became the only notion he held on to for 3 years, which he felt, in just 3 years I was free. But when I was reading it, I was like, 3 years? I can't hold it for 3 minutes. No, so it felt like that. But it resonated with him, so it is fine. So something like that, just remain with the sense I am. You see, he used that pointer. That is the only thing he says he used. And he came to this final scene. So that is a part of it. Now, many of us, especially in India, have a very devotional temperament, and it comes very naturally for us to just surrender everything to the feet of the master. We don't have these ideas about servitude and these kind of things which bother us. So that's why something like Guru Kripa Kevalam, and not just of course in India, but everywhere in the world, but it's part of our conditioning here, where it's not so much in the West. So that's why Guru Kripa Kevalam seems very easy. Just don't bother with it. You see, everything that the mind is inviting you to resolve, to fix, the master is already taking care of it. You see, you can remain in the unborn. Okay, somebody new has her hand up. Well, not new, but yeah, first time she's coming for an interaction here. So Anna, you can come.
Namaste. Namaste, Anantaji. You can hear me?
Yes.
Last night I was walking, and there was excitement about being in satsang, and so I was able to change my work schedule so I can be, because I'm in the East Coast of the United States, so I can come in late to be in satsang. So as I'm walking, I'm thinking, oh, I wanna meet Anantaji. I wanna raise my hand, and there's some fear coming up around that and excitement. And as I'm walking, I'm graced with the like, oh, you're like, you're here now. I don't need to wait until tomorrow. And so and that is, that's experienced now, and that's experienced on the walk. And so I don't know what I guess there's no question. I was just feeling like this feeling keeps coming, like, oh, I want to raise my hand and meet you, and thank you. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much. Such a beautiful report, and this is true. This is true that your true being, your pure presence, is your master, and it is always with you. Even to say with you is too far. You see, it's too far. So, and this boy is just I can't say boy anymore, so much grey hair, but this man is just just an instrument for the same divine presence. All Guruji's grace to make that happen. But the true meeting with the master is independent of what form it may take. And I'm very happy that this was the revelation that came to you. Also, I have to say, having said all of that, there's a sweetness in this meeting also, so we can enjoy when that happens. Because I don't feel like there's been any greater joy in this life, greater than when I sit at the feet of my master. So he's always with me, and yet there's a beautiful play in the Leela where this seeming duality can sometimes feel so sweet. Usually it's full of suffering and misery and painful things, but the true open meeting with a master is one of the sweetest things. So I can understand both aspects of what you said actually. What time is it in Boston?
I'm in Maine, actually, north of Boston, and it's 9 a.m.
9 a.m. All my love, all my love. What to say after a beautiful meeting like that? Very good, very good. Okay. Thank you. Then next one says, Father, what you have talked about selfishness was for me. Satsang started. Is that selfishness? No, I'm just. For who? No, I'm just messing with you. I don't know. Partly messing. Satsang Satsang started to be hot for me, and struggling has started because, okay, now where is the peaceful life in its outer expression too? Yes. You see, so we trouble ourselves in this way, and God does not fulfill my expectation, nor can I do anything. Rebelliousness comes. But this is the best relationship. You see, for some whom rebelliousness comes because you feel like, no, I just want to do this on my own and I'm not getting anything from this anyway, then they just leave. No? But there's beauty in this master disciple play when it's a bit like a mongoose and snake, and neither are winning. You're just stuck. You see? So because when you're out of moves, you see, that's when true openness comes. Then you have ideas about what this should mean, what spirituality should give you, what your freedom should look like, what your master should sound like. All of these things only get in your way. And I want to say this to you, my child, with full humility, that I played that game for a long time before I met my master. You see? I played that game with multiple masters, many things where I was constantly judging and saying, no, this, no, that, this is working for me, this is not working for me. When I met Guruji, it was like a bazooka. There was no room to decide or to say, I like this, I don't like this, I prefer master like this, all. So he blessed me with that, so I stopped wandering around so much. But you can trust. Next one says, Father, I want to expose a persistent desire to have a perfect romantic relationship. I offer it into the fire. Yes. If there is one construct which is part of most cultures, most conditioning, it is this. The idea of a perfect relationship which somehow construes that what is already is not perfect. You see, I need perfection to come. You see, I need perfection to come from an external sort of source, or something will complete me. You see, that's what would make it perfect. So, as you're meeting your own perfection, as you see that the substratum of this entire play is perfection itself, you see, then we stop trying to grasp it so much in this realm. You see? Because in this realm, I'm sorry to break it to all of you, but there's nothing which the mind can determine as perfect. Even if provisionally or temporarily it seems perfect. You see, it can always say, hey, this could be a bit more like this. You see, nobody, and the philosophers are it's time to say goodbye. The philosophers have said this. You see, the mathematicians have said this. You see, nobody can draw a perfect circle. Nobody can draw a perfect line. Nothing perfect. There's no perfect building. There's no perfect body. There's no perfect life situation. There's no perfect anything. You see? So there's no perfect anything, and that includes this, especially includes this idea of perfect relationship. In fact, the very famous author, I remember, used to be very popular with the girls when I was in college, and everybody used to idolize his books and things like that. So he wrote about this notion of soulmates and how you find your soulmate and the soulmate will complete you and things like that. And he talked about his relationship, finding his soulmate, and within a few years he was divorced. You know, and then half his audience was so upset with him because they felt like they were sold this story. So there's nothing personal against that. It can happen with everyone, but the idea is that these notions of perfection, especially in relationship. You see, how would we have a perfect relationship when we are so unsteady ourselves? We initially get attracted to someone because he's so different from me, she's so different from me. Opposites attract. Then we feel like this is perfect relationship. We fit so well because we are so different. You see. Then you get into a relationship. Within a few days, I wish you could change this about yourself. It's not really so nice. So then we want to make that one more like us. That one wants to make the other one more like them. You see? And the same thing which we loved so much before we start taking the other for granted, the same things start bothering us. You see? And then we start saying, yeah, the opposites were fun for a bit, but I think we should come to the best version of what this could be, and that is my version. So how can we build a perfect building on a shaky foundation? You see? And if our foundation itself is shaky, we are shaky about ourselves. We are so constructed by these belief systems which are so provisional. You see, I could believe 20 things today. I could wake up tomorrow morning and something could happen, and I could meet someone or something could happen and they would say, rah, 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 it's actually like this, it's actually like that. I could have a completely different belief system and I would take myself to be a Martian or something. It's possible. You see, many conspiracy theories out there. So if the basis for us to have a relationship itself is so unstable that it can keep changing with every belief that comes, how can we match that with perfection, especially when both sides seem to be that way? So then what is the perfect relationship? I would say that a relationship which has openness, which has spaciousness. We are not trying to change so much. We're not trying to change that one. We're not imposing it under so much pressure that my partner should be like this. Not all of these ideas. You see? And many who are in spirituality, and this one did this for a very long time, and I think it was Adya who came up with the term. He came up with the term spiritual jerk. You see? He said, so I was reading Adya at one time before I met Guruji, and I had already started reading all of this Advaita stuff. And then sometimes what would happen is that Garima, my wife, would come with having a bad day at work or something, and she just wanted to share, this happened, and I would just say, to who did it happen? You see? And she would just feel like, I don't want to talk to you anymore, because she was just, venting and just finding some release. You come home and you expect to vent a bit and share things. You see? So I was always Advaita policing her. So in that way, I was not the perfect husband at that time. I was, even though like Adya said at that time, that you could be saying everything that you could be saying could be pointing to the truth, but you're still a jerk. You see, so we can't hide behind the construct. Many people do that, but what I said is true. You see, we feel like what we think is true. If we say that, we have license to hurt people, but it's not that way. You see, it is not that way. So, and what truth can you speak anyway? What truth can we ever speak? It's only our version, our idea about reality. You see? So, it will go a long way towards perfection if you drop the idea of perfection. If you make it empty of expectation, for me that sounds like a perfect relationship. And one says, Namaste Anantaji, this sticking to one is a little confusing to me. At different points in time, I find that I resonate with different sticks. What do we do then? Should we go with the flow, or should we stick on to that one stick? Either. If it is true that you go with the flow, that is an option for you, then go with the flow. If you can hold on to one stick, hold on to one stick. Something in the throat is not feeling so good to keep speaking so much, so maybe we can just hear some bhajans and things. And there are quite a few questions left. There's somebody new, so let me take that one. Okay, I'm just going to take this one because I haven't seen her in satsang before. So this one says, "Good evening, Father. I'm struggling with an evolving health issue that comes and goes. But each time the bout of illness knocks the door, the consciousness expands and retracts in duality. I experience non-duality. I feel the complete love for the universe in each phase, but the loneliness also grips. Father, please show a way." It's very good. It's already very good. It sounds like you're meeting everything that shows up with a fair amount of openness. Now, whatever your holiest concepts may be, remain empty of those as well. I forget about consciousness expanding, anything that you may have even heard in satsang. Just return to the innocence of a child. In that way, you will just very naturally and organically meet everything from your openness, from the spaciousness which is beyond space. I feel like you're going very well already. Just any reference that you may be still making to yourself, even if it is according to your mind a worthy reference, even that you let go of. See? Nothing of value can ever be let go of. So you will never leave or lose anything as you let go. Just remain in the unborn, in your notionless existence. Because what is actually ineffable. And our constructs, as high as they may be, they can never scratch the surface of reality. So when Bhagwan said, lose the I thought. See, what is the I thought? The I thought, for spiritual seekers especially, could be the highest references that we can make to ourselves. Maybe as consciousness, maybe as awareness. But even these are just pointers. Just remain empty. And I'll just remind you of Master Bankai's words. All things are perfectly resolved in the unborn. My Master also always says, there is no power greater than your being. Okay, there's a sweet message. Father, this may seem silly, but I am buying a used car and it brings a lot of anxiety because I know very little about cars. Can I please have a blessing? I'm so very grateful to you. All my blessings may it bring full auspiciousness and joy into your life. Okay, so I feel like my throat is making it pretty clear that we won't continue anymore. Father, when you snap your fingers, are you pointing to being or awareness? Sorry, I'm still confused on some of the basics. You see, actually, this is my bypass. You see, with this, you don't need to know anything. You don't need to recognize anything. You don't have to distinguish beingness, awareness, manifest, unmanifest, saguna, nirguna, Brahman, Ishvara, Jiva, all of that. So, it is not your understanding that I'm looking for. So, if you're still confused, good. It's not a bad thing. I know this part may frustrate you and may frustrate many of you, but actually, it's a very good thing that you're not able to resolve it there. No? That's when you'll give up this. You see? If you feel like your shovel is getting you to the treasure, you will keep shoveling. You see? I'm telling you that the treasure is right in front of you, but you got so used to shoveling. You see? So, like I keep saying that if you want tomatoes, then don't dig under the ground. You will only find potatoes. So, if you are confused to the extent that you will give up on your intellect and stop trying to fit reality into your tiny intellect, then that is a great confusion and it's great auspiciousness. Otherwise, you will try to keep using this measuring instrument to measure the immeasurable. It's very limited. You see? So, this click, if anyone says they've understood it, forget about it. It is a bypass operation from all the layers of your mind and intellect.
It reminds me of the quote you said from the heart or from the way of the heart.
Yeah.
If you think there's a step, I remove you the ladder.
Yes.
Nice one.
Aren't you going to read this one? You're going to do the recording one? It is very beautiful what you said. Very, very beautiful. Much more beautiful than how the original was spoken, that is for sure. I'm sure the reading will be very, very sweet. Someone is saying, it's the author herself saying, yes, please ask Gopala to read from the book Shruti Singh. I feel like it will be nice, and someone can join you. Someone can join you, and we can make a recording out of some passages. Because he read, he read, what did you read? Shruti's letter, no? He read, not part of it.
Shruti's forward.
Forward. That is itself so beautiful.
I was so affected by it, and I knew you were too when she did that.
Yeah.
I was really crying.
Yeah.
It was so profound.
Yeah, it touched
So
me.
I told Shruti, I want her to read, because it's so profound. Then I just did a reading. She said, you read, and I did a reading. And it came out good. And she said, I must send it to you.
Beautiful. Okay, I know there's some hands up and quite a few questions that I missed, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. What can I play for you? I'm happy to be DJ for some time. Already they're prepared for that. It's like they were waiting for satsang to get over. Let's see what came. I like this because it's like the box of chocolate thing. You just click and you don't know what's going to show up.
The river is a healer, the river is a sage. The river knows no ending, the river feels no age. The river is a leader every single day. He's living in the moment and it always finds a way. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel home. The river calls me over, it's calling out my name. In the day and in the night, I hear that river all the same. It's calling me over, calling out my pain. Oh, a river gathers tears just like a river gathers rain. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel home. The river is a traveler, always on the go. Oh, a river never worries if it's fast or if it's slow. River, take me to where I need to go. And I will just relax and let the river flow. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water, by the water, by the water, by the water, I feel whole. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, when I go down to the water, by the water I feel home.
Yeah, nice. Well spotted because we are talking about the river so much. Huh? About your one, you were going to say something? I like this one.
रसने पिबरे राम
Thank you all so much for being in satsang today. Sadhguru Shri Muji Baba ki jai.
Sadhguru Shri Ananta Ji ki jai.
Guru Kripa Kevalam.